Alright guys, let's try to solve today's problem. It's 2894 divisible and non-divisible sums difference. So we want to return the integer num1 and num2, where num1 is represented by the sum of all integers between 1 through n that are not divisible, and num2 is simply the ones that are divisible, right? So you can do this brute force, but that's a pretty dumb solution. I figured out the better way, I think. It's using a math, because the moment I see like patterns and the moment I see like divisible by, inclusive, the sum of all integers 1 through n, that's probably going to lead me to this equation, where it's like simply the num of sum from 1 to n is going to be equal to n times n plus 1 over 2, right? We're going to be using that later, because what I want to do is simply, right, so in the end, num1 and num2 are kind of really bad variable names. So let's say sum of the number of divisible things minus the sum of number of not divisible things, right? And so what we can do is, first let's try to figure out this value. So what is the sum of the number divisible by, right? What is that? To solve for this, the best way to solve these problems is by using like an example scenario, 1 through n, and let's set n is equal to 30 and m is equal to 4. So we have some like 1, 2, 3, dot, 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 30. 30, and then, so here it would be something like, if it's divisible by 4, then it would be 4 plus 8 plus 12 plus all the way down to 28. That's the last one, right? So what exactly is this? You can use this brute force by, adding all the possible ones divisible by 4, but that's a pretty dumb way. We can do better than that. 4. So we know how many times this is, right? We know that there's simply going to be n integer fraction m, that's going to be 30 over 4, and that's going to be 7 integers that are divisible by m. M is being 4 in this case. And we can, if there's 7 integers divisible, right? We can use that value, right? We can use that value to think of it like this, right? If 4 is k, 8 is 2k, and 12 is 3k, right? And this all goes all the way to what? 7k. Do you see that? So this is also the same thing as 1k, 2k, 3k, 4k, 5k. And remember, that's the exact same thing we're doing with the sum of the natural numbers from 1 to n. So that's simply going to be k times k plus 1 divided by 2, right? And we know what is k. K is going to be equal to 7, right? So we have 7 times 7 plus 1 over 2. So that is going to give us what? That's going to give us 28k, right? 28k. So it's 1k, 2k, 3k, all the way plus 7k is going to give us 28k. So let's see. And k we know is going to be equal to 7, yes? Right. So 28 times 7. So if we were to simplify this, this would be sum of non-divisible by is simply going to be equal to, I'm going to create a variable here. Number divisible by is going to be n integer fraction m, and it's going to be equal to num_div times num_div plus 1 over 2, right? Because that's how you get the sum. And because, it's going to be multiplied, right? You see this k here is going to be multiplied by our divisible thing. So actually, right, it's going to be m in this case, right? Because let's see here, m. This is how we're going to get sum of num-div. You may ask, why are we dividing by, why are we multiplying by m? Well, you can see that, remember that num-div is going to be equal to how many integers are divisible by. We got that as 7, and we use that 7 to get simply, to get 1k, 2k, 3k, right? Where k is equal to 4, right? Because 2 times 4 is 8, 3 times k, if k is 4, is 12, right? So this would simply be 28 times 4, and that is what we have going on here, right? And so now we have the sum of the number of values that are divisible from 1 through n. Now we're pretty much done with the question, because remember, to get the total is simply equal to n times n plus 1, right? n plus 1 over 2. And we know the sum of the numbers that are divisible by it, right? Which means the ones that are not divisible by it is simply the subtraction from this total minus the sum of our number of div, right? So if you were to rewrite this, right, so the result is going to be equal to the total minus the sum. So total is represented by this, right? It's total sum of num of div, right, minus sum of num div, right? Because this is represented by the numbers that aren't divisible. So this would be nums1 minus num2, and that is pretty much how you get the solution. Pretty straightforward question. It's a bit more complicated the way I did it, but it's faster for sure, because you're not really brute forcing anything. You're simply just, well, doing basic arithmetic. So yeah, good problem, and let's just get on straight to the coding.